Conchita Cruz, and I am one of the co-founders of the Asylum Seeker Advocacy Project, ASAP, currently a project at the Urban Justice Center. And I'm going to be speaking to you a little bit about our experience founding ASAP, as well as the work that we do right now. We provide remote rapid response representation to asylum seekers, primarily mothers and children who have crossed the U.S.-Mexico border seeking refuge from gang violence, from drug-related violence, and transnational criminal organizations, as well as sexual violence. And I started doing this work when I was a law student at Yale, where I met my three other co-founders, Swapna, Dorothy, and Liz. We went down to the family detention facility in Dilley, Texas, to volunteer for a week. We thought we could use some of the skills and the knowledge that we had gained when we were in clinic in law school to try to help asylum seekers who were having credible fear interviews on the border. But we found out prior to going down that there was a family who had been forced to have their entire asylum trial while in detention. So this mother and child had been in detention for 4 months and didn't have an attorney, didn't have anyone to represent them in their trial, and they were going to go to trial no matter what the week that we were there. So we worked with a clinical professor who had taken us down for the week to prepare that asylum trial remotely before we arrived and then while we were there. The work that we did was something that maybe a solo practitioner or a small law firm or a clinic would take 6 months to prepare, but we were able to do it in 2 weeks. And thankfully, our client, her name is Suni Rodriguez, and was able to win her trial that week and was released with her son from the Dilley Family Detention Facility. Suni made a huge impact on our lives and on the lives of all of the families at the Dilley Family Detention Facility, because when she met us, she told us not only about her own story, but from the get-go, she wanted us to know there were a lot of families like her at the detention facility who didn't have an attorney and who were being forced to have their trials while in detention. She herself was someone who had fled Honduras because of her own activism. Her mother had been murdered, and she suspected it was the police that had murdered her mother and then covered up the crime. And so because she demanded justice for her mother, for her family, the police went after her and her husband and her child. And so when she got to Texas, it's, I guess, no surprise that that same spirit of hers of demanding justice came out in the form of fighting back against the unlawful detention of children for many months, and also the abuses of detention officers while she was in the facility, not just things that were impacting her, but those around her. And so even though at the end of the week we were celebrating with her that she was about to be released, as soon as the initial kind of relief wore off, she turned to us and said, okay guys, but what happens now? Because there are other families in this same position, and you can't just leave these families here. I mean, you know now that if you hadn't been here, I probably would have been deported. And I probably would have been deported to my death. And so, we were like, well, we have summer internships coming up. We have to move. We don't live here on the U.S.-Mexico border in Texas. That's not where we're based. And she was like, excuses, excuses. You have to figure this out. And so with that in mind, we worked together to see what we could do for the next family that was going to have a trial. We thought, okay, we're going to prepare everything from everywhere where we are. Our clinical professor was going to be traveling. She said, I'll supervise everything remotely. We'll get someone to come in to fill the actual shoes of the attorney doing the trial on the day of, but we'll prepare everything, from wherever we are. But we also couldn't do it alone. Yes.
What's the name of your clinical professor?
Alora Mukherjee
From
Columbia University. And she also graduated from Yale and then went on to teach our ASAP seminar at Yale, where we were in school at the time. And we had also just met Alora, by the way, a few weeks earlier. So it was a lot of faith in us that she allowed us to move forward with this plan. And from then on, basically, we decided we have to get other people to help us because we can't do everything we had, I think, 2 weeks again to prepare. We can't do everything in such a short turnaround by ourselves. We were going to be working full-time in jobs, and so we were sending out emails asking for volunteers. People signed up, and we were able to complete the case using kind of like an approach of a conveyor belt. One person did one task, then the next person did another. You know, we had one volunteer working on a declaration for a family member. We had another volunteer helping to collect evidence via WhatsApp with other people who were in the home country. And so eventually we were able to win that case, and so on. And I'm going to play a video right now with that's Alba's story, which was featured by as the main story in the UNHCR Women on the Run report. And so Alba is one of the women, and her daughter, who's featured in the video, one of the families that we were able to provide services for in the Dilley Family Detention Facility, and one of the families that was forced to have their whole trial while in detention. And so I'll talk a little bit about Alba and what happened after we represented her in just a moment. But I want to play you this video so you get to know her a little bit and some of the issues that these families that we've represented face. Oops, it's the volume. Sorry, the volume doesn't seem to...
Oh, but it has.
Okay, but it has subtitles, so we can just continue. So, just so you get an idea of some of the claims that families who are fleeing violence in Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras are facing. And after we took on Alba's case, her and her daughter Nicole also won their cases. They were able to be released from the Dilley Family Detention Facility. At that point, we realized we had a little bit of a model going, that we had started to take on cases remotely and that they were successful. A lot of people told us it wasn't possible to do work remotely on asylum cases, that you had to develop a rapport with your client and that you couldn't do so by phone or by video conference. And obviously these were not ideal conditions for anyone, but we understood what SUNY had told us, which was, you know, if you hadn't been here or if you hadn't represented me, I would probably be deported. and deported to my death, and we couldn't let that happen to any of these families when we knew we had the ability to work on their cases remotely, and we were winning. And so despite the fact that a lot of attorneys that we reached out to at the beginning were very hesitant to work with us because of the fact that we were working remotely on cases, we kept going. And by the end of the summer, this was the summer of 2015, we had taken on over 10 of these sort of asylum trials while in detention, won all of them. We had also placed cases that we couldn't take on because they were happening at the same